for your organization. Do you think one of those conditions may be letting Ruth Jefferson go?
I certainly wouldn't think so. This has never been part of the discussion with the Office of Economic Opportunity at any time.
Do you think your job is secure?
I hope not. I'm here on an interim basis, you know that.
And you would not want to stay?
I've said that for some time.
There were two bodies inside the fire. Several cans that had contained flammable liquid inside of the building. Flammable liquid had been spread around in the building.
He's worried, particularly, I know, about stemming inflation. And the Defense Department, being one of the big spenders, naturally is going to be under great pressures to cut back to the lowest level that's commensurate with what we feel are adequate forces. And I think it's important for the people to understand the issues so they can support them as they come up, which they will within the next few years. Like the one-horse shay, it will never get obsolete if you keep putting enough money into it to keep it going. It's obsolescent now. And by that I mean it gets increasingly more difficult for it to penetrate, if we ever had to penetrate, the enemy defenses, which are getting better, and more equipment, better equipment, more of it. So just when it becomes obsolete, it's hard to say. It depends on your definition.
The inner-city school program is a relatively new idea, but the core city student is an old problem. The primary effort of the Dallas Independent School District will be to get parental involvement in the inner city, but that's only half a solution. The other half is the teacher. I asked Otto Friday, the director of the program, just what he thought about it. Then I asked Louis McWhirter, principal of James Madison High School, his opinion.
Well, one of the key things that we propose to do in this area is to retrain a lot of teachers. We feel that training in how to use new strategies and new techniques of learning is very essential. We feel that some attitudes have to be changed about new procedures and new procedures in this matter of teaching youngsters on every facet of American livelihood that you can think of. To be able to relate effectively to young people is one of the most necessary essentials of a good educational system. If we fail to relate, we're not educating.
We have any number of teachers that are very, very good teachers, but nevertheless, I do believe that some of them are geared to the middle class concept, and which is not bad because this is the way that they were taught, and this is the way that they teach. I think that a program should be designed to help these people to teach, and I think that they would do a more effective job in the inner city school concept.
In the relative peace and serenity of places like this, it seems almost incomprehensible that it may take acts of violence to maintain them. The Sierra Club is a nationally known conservationist group. Its president is Philip Berry. Mr. Berry said recently he foresees the day when the young people of America, tired of inaction by our legislators, will take the law in their own hands. He says he sees the day when roving bands of what he called Green Panthers will enforce the anti-pollution laws in their own way. A local conservationist, Dallas attorney Edward Fritz, is also concerned about pollution, and he also had some thoughts about the Green Panthers. Every man, woman, and child knows about pollution. We see it on television, we read about it, and the picture that's presented it usually seems to be one of the worst proportion. Is it blown out of proportion, or is it really that bad?
I think it's really that bad. Every stream in Dallas is polluted. Practically every major stream in the state of Texas is polluted, and I believe that we have to spend about 10 times as much as anyone has advocated spending so far before we could solve the water pollution problem alone.
Will spending money do it? There have been laws passed, legislation has been offered, some of it accepted. Still, we have pollution. Is that the answer, through legislation and legal action?
No, that's just one index. I believe that the answer is for the enforcement authorities to get busy and to really see that the law is complied with, and if it isn't, to file rigorous lawsuits.
What if the laws don't work?
I think frustration, particularly among the youth, frustration at the terrible state of the environment that our generation is leaving to them. I believe that many of them are very angry, and I believe that it's up to us to prevent any kind of a holocaust, to get real busy in the remaining time that we have here to try to solve all the problems of the environment, the vanishing open space, the increasing water and air pollution, the solid waste pile up, everything that is now tending to deteriorate our environment.
Whether they be forceful or militant, conservationists agree that the pollution of our land must stop before a group like the Green Panthers is necessary. The alternative in either case paints a very dark picture. This is Gene Thomas, Channel 8 News on the Move in Dallas.
The inner-city school program will operate in 34 schools around Dallas that have low-income individuals. The primary purpose of the program is to try and counteract the environment in which some of these students live, to increase achievement. The primary goal of the program is to get parental involvement. I asked Otto Friday, the director of the program, just what he meant by that.
We want to involve parents in the learning process. Many people think when we say community involvement or parental involvement that we mean parents taking over. Now, we don't operate on this thesis. We operate on the basis that our school will become more effective as parents become involved in the actual learning process and identify themselves with it. This way, we're doing two things. We're acquainting the parent with what we in the schools are attempting to do for their children. We, as the persons or the people in the schools, are finding out what their parents expect. And by putting them two together, we have some common basis upon which we can work. We're enabling the parent to understand the school. We are understanding the parent. We are providing the parent with ways and means of assisting their youngsters as they come home in the afternoon in the matter of the developmental of skills. We also provide this parent with educational uplift, which will in turn make for a better community. These, I think, are twofold areas in which the community becomes involved, and as the community becomes involved and identifies itself with what the school is trying to do.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday for many years. Happy birthday to you.
I think that it is unwise and improper for the municipal government of the city of Fort Worth to leave entirely to the Chamber of Commerce all concerns about ambitious new developments within the city. I think although it's not a specific function spelled out in our charter, that we should be concerned about those matters, but as a total responsibility to the community, the city government, the city council of Fort Worth ought to be concerned about ambitious new progressive development within the city.
Well, the council is very concerned that we continue Sunday bus service in the city of Fort Worth on some basis. And the recent experiment by the transit company has indicated that they're not able to operate at a profit in an existing fare schedule. So it was the purpose of the council today to adjust that fare schedule by allowing a 60-cent charge for Sunday only, hoping that the transit company would be able to operate at least a break even or possibly make a small profit and still afford Sunday bus service to the citizens of Fort Worth.
The effect had been an explosion in the building.
Marshal Wind, how do you know there was arson involved in this fire here?
The fire department received a call at 2:37 this morning from the police department radio unit that there'd been an explosion and a fire at 5817 Camp Boyd Boulevard. I happened to hear the call on the radio at home, and I got up and got dressed and came up here. We have no identification. He was dressed in Western clothes, large Western belt buckle on. If anyone in the audience knows of a missing person of this description, give us a call. Care of the Fort Worth Fire Department.
Marshal Wind, do you know of any known
About 2:30, a car came driving up and two guys got out, and they got in the trunk and got a couple of cans and walked in the door. I guess they had a key or something. And then a little while later, I heard the place blow up. Fire blowing out the windows and stuff.
Had you ever seen these two men before?
No, sir, I sure hadn't.
Did you sell anyone any gas in cans last night or this morning while you were on duty?
No, sir.
Was there any noise, like there may have been an argument across the street that you could hear earlier?
No, sir, I couldn't hear anybody talking.
You just heard the explosion and then saw flames?
Right.
Mr. Miller, we understand that the Office of Economic Opportunity has okayed refunding the Dallas County Community Action Committee. Is this correct?
As I understand it now, the evaluation report is not unfavorable, and I will know some specific information regarding refunding tomorrow.
When you say not unfavorable, do you consider it to be favorable then to your organization?
I hope that it will be a positive report, but I can't talk to the exact nature of it until such time as it's complete and I have it, and I don't have it at this point.
Mr. Miller, do you feel secure this evening that you will get the balance of your funds for this fiscal year?
Reasonably secure, but until such time as the information is passed along in writing, I would think that I shouldn't be certain, nor should anybody in this agency be certain.
Now, we feel that is in writing and is in the mail to you at this time.
That is not the case.
When do you feel you will see it in writing?
I hope by the end of the week.
Now, if this is favorable to your organization, and apparently it will be, do you take this as a favorable comment on the Ruth Jefferson case?
I don't think there's any relationship between the two.
In other words, you feel that they would go ahead and endorse the organization even though she is a part of the organization?
I would hope so, because the matter of Ruth Jefferson has no bearing whatever on the refunding of the agency.
What is your opinion on her case?
I won't have any comment until Mr. Burleson finishes his report, and we hope that will be due within the next few days.
So, in addition to the study of the causes of this particular fire, it could encompass the possible installation of alarm system. You've got to wake the people up too, and this is usually where tragedies occur, smoke inhalation overcomes the victims before the fire actually reaches them in many cases.
Robert, you witnessed an explosion this morning across the street at the Golden Razor. What happened?
Well, sir, about 2:30, two guys came driving up, and they got out of the car with a couple of cans of gas or something, and they walked inside. A little while later, the place blew up.
Did you hear any noise before the explosion?
No, sir, sure didn't.
What happened after the explosion?
Well, I went in and called the police department and fire department.
Had you seen these two cars before?
No, sir, I sure hadn't.
Had you seen anybody in the area in the Golden Razor at that hour before?
No, just the two men.
Is there normally anyone in the building at 2 o'clock in the morning?
No, sir, there's a club up the street that closes at 2 o'clock, and after that, it gets real dead around here.
Robert, you were witness early this morning to an explosion across the street at the Golden Razor. What happened?
Well, sir, about 2:30, two guys drove up in a car, and they got out and got in the trunk and got a couple of cans. Then they went inside, and a little while later, the place blew up.
Had you... Good cut. Robert, you witnessed an explosion across the street early this morning at the Golden Razor. Can you tell me what happened?
Yes.
In this past year, there are several things of which I'm proud, and I'd like to tell you about them. I'm proud of the fact that we have done our work within the cost limits set for us, that our construction has been of good quality, and yet the supervision and administration costs were reasonable. Our engineering and design has gone well, and we have performed within the cost limits set for us. And this all despite the fact we've had personnel shortages, some of them in critical positions. I'm especially pleased that our reservoirs have been as well managed as they have been within the personnel shortages under which we have to live.
You'll have to get the extension to it.
Another thing that I'm pleased about is that our consolidation with Albuquerque has gone so well. As you know, we took over 16 new military installations and increased the area of coverage of this district by about 50%. In the process, we were able to offer jobs to about 100 employees of the Albuquerque district and invite them to come and join us. It looks right now like that in this consolidation, contrary to what has happened elsewhere in the country, we have not been put in the position where we've had to fire any employee. Every employee of either Fort Worth or Albuquerque who wanted a job was able to have one. I'm also pleased that we've been able to participate in things outside our normal activities and make a contribution in those areas. I'm referring specifically to the cleanup after Hurricane Camille, the cleanup that's going on in Lubbock now, cleaning up the debris from the tornado in that area. We had people who participated in Operation Foresight, the flood control activity up in the Northern Plains area. We have members of this district who are serving today in Saudi Arabia, in Korea, in Europe, in Panama, and in other places here in the United States. We've even ranged far enough afield to take on a design project of a flood control nature in Southern California, and are doing more work than we know.
There are minor items regarding the overexpenditure in certain program accounts, the justification for that overexpenditure, and a matching under expenditure in other program accounts. We've got to supply some documentation and some justification for those expenses.
Were there any personnel or organizational restrictions placed on the rodeo?
None whatever. None that I'm aware of. I haven't seen the evaluation yet, but certainly not in the information that I got from Austin. I think we've made reasonable progress towards meeting the obligations that were placed on us. I don't think that we've done all of the things that we will have to do, simply because in a matter of time and effort that has to go into it, we've only been at this from my point of view for about 4 months now. But I think reasonable progress has been made since we were given this task by the OEO.
The President ought to reduce interest rates right off, not 1/4%. He ought to bring them back where they were. Now, last year, they've argued in the past there was no power. The controller of the currency doesn't have power. Federal Reserve Board says we can't do it. The Secretary of the Treasury said we can't do it. Certainly the power rests in all three. But last year, the Democratic Congress did something for a Republican president that a Congress has never done before for a president. We passed a law giving him the power to lower interest rates. Instead, they've gone up twice. He could take that law we passed last year and lower these interest rates. That would be the starting spark immediately.
Judge Cole, what is your reaction today to Judge Sterrett's rebuff of your letter and his statements that he would go to jail before he would appear before you?
Well, actually, I think rebuff is the wrong term. At the time that he made these statements to you, and at all times during, all day yesterday, he had not received the letter that I had received, that I had sent. The letter was mailed yesterday afternoon. I presume that the letter was received this morning.
I had no reaction. I expected the letter. I knew it was coming. I was a little disappointed. In fact, no reflection on Judge Cole. We've been good friends for many, many years. Very fond of him. All men don't operate alike.
Why was that complaint turned down by so many courts before it got to you?
I have no comment on another man's actions in this matter.
How did the subject of going to jail come up?
Judge Sterrett came in here apparently after he had talked to certain members of the news media yesterday, immediately afternoon, and insisted that I issue a warrant for his arrest and process him as what he termed a common criminal.
Once you've gotten into a situation with your armed forces, that certainly the President has got plenty of authority to do what has to be done to protect the lives of his people in the armed services. And that when a operation is urged upon him by his military advisors, and he accepts that military advice, balancing it against the other larger considerations that there always are in any major war, I think that he has all authority that's necessary.
American Airlines dedicated its new multi-million-dollar flight academy today. The academy is located on an 80-acre tract of ground near Greater Southwest International Airport, midway between Dallas and Fort Worth. The dedication was culminated when American President George A. Spader of New York unveiled a plaque dedicated the new flight academy and expanded Stewardess College to Mr. C.R. Smith, who was Chief Executive Officer for American for 30 years and served as Secretary of Commerce in President Johnson's presidential cabinet. Rumor spread earlier that President Johnson would perhaps pay a surprise visit to the ceremonies, but apparently illness prevented the President from attending the ceremony. Each new American pilot and co-pilot will spend at least 6 weeks here once a year. The flight captains come twice a year. On this, the anniversary of the Wright brothers' flight, The future of commercial aviation seems bright and unlimited. Art Sinclair, Channel 8 News, on the move at the American Flight Academy.
I think President Nixon is not only committed, but I think he firmly is trying to bring the war to a conclusion. Now, it may not be entirely in his hands. He may not be able to pull it off because the other side sometimes has something to say about whether the first party can get out of a war very easily or not. We are all hoping that we're in a transitional economy. He did point out that some 700,000 men have been withdrawn from the war effort, both uniformed men and those working in war-related industries.
Dyer, what was the reaction of the military men the president talked to prior to his Cambodian speech? What did they think about the Cambodian encouragement?
Well, I think that they were very much encouraged that something of that nature was being undertaken, since primarily we are committed to getting our foot soldiers, combat foot soldiers, out of Vietnam. And I think there were many people who felt that the Vietnam Army was not quite ready to stand up to a real full-out attack by the North Vietnamese. And I think also that many of them were worried that due to the very short distance between the Cambodian sanctuaries in Saigon, which is really the loading port in which you outload so many of these soldiers, and where if you permitted the North Vietnamese to have this very large logistic support so close that they would be able to mount a major offensive and maintain it. And so I think they were very heartened by the thought that something was being done to get our people out of there, probably with just normal amount of losses instead of major losses.
What is the general feeling, Admiral Dyer, about the President's authority to do this? What is your own personal opinion about whether he can commit our troops into countries that we are not at war with?
Well, I would say that is a political question and a bit outside of the military expertise, I'd say, but my own opinion of it is that
Cambodia to destroy those strongholds and stockpiles of ammunition, supplies, and food, also into Laos. Is there any new credence to the argument against going into the harbor at Haiphong?
Well, of course, as a military individual, I mean, I thought this was a highly desirable thing to do, and I'm sure it was given consideration, perhaps not recently, but certainly several years ago, it was given very much consideration. But as I said before, when military advisors seek authority to do something like that, the president has got to balance that against what he may think the political consequences may be. And I'm not thinking of political in the sense of Republican versus Democrat. I'm thinking of the political consequences on a worldwide basis. And the question always has been is that if we did seal off Haiphong and mine it and so forth, whether that would stimulate the Soviets or the Chinese possibly to take military reprisal.
Assuming the Cambodian effort is successful in hastening the troop withdrawal from South Vietnam, it still stands to reason that there will be some protection needed along the coastal areas, and that's going to be up to the Navy since the Vietnamese have no Navy. What kind of commitment do you see over the long range to the coastal area of Vietnam?
I would think it would be a long time commitment. My own belief is, though, that you go back 10 years, the Koreans had no Navy. And actually, they have gotten so they have a right good little naval force. The South Vietnamese had no Navy. I was out there in 1960, and they just had a very few small craft. We have turned over to them quite a few craft in the intervening period of years, and it is not beyond my belief that they'll be able to handle their own situation largely with proper passage of time. And I think that is one of the great
our wage increases depend on what the cost of living is, what the standard of living is. As it increases, we need more money. But our wage increases are a reaction, again, of what happened before.
What can labor do you feel, to hold down the inflationary spiral?
Well, I think labor has done real well. For instance, the president mentioned that there should be a committee to increase output per worker so that there would be a corresponding decrease in the causes of inflation. Since in the last 25 years, output cost per unit on automobiles, air conditioning, food is about the same labor cost, yet the profits have gone up. So I think we're doing a good job. He's going to have to cut out federal spending, watch profits, and get on a peacetime economy.
Will labor do more to help the president now as a result of this speech?
His speech promises nothing, recommends nothing, just words, appointing committees to do something. I can't see any way we can help him.
Character assassination is real serious in my book.
Who do you feel would be behind a character assassination?
Well, any complaint that's filed against you, if it's false, a criminal complaint, that remains a permanent record. It couldn't be anything other than character assassination.
Then do you feel that Mr. Rogers is the guilty one in this case?
I feel that Mr. Rogers, down deep in his heart, thought that I had committed a very serious crime and that I should be punished.
But you feel he's guilty of character assassination?
Well, not necessarily. I wouldn't call it that. If I'm convicted, well, then he's justified. And if I am guilty, I should be convicted.
Mm-hmm. But yes, sir, you did call it character assassination.
Any criminal complaint naturally affects the character and a man's reputation. That follows him the rest of his life.
They should be completed by then. It'll take some doing, but we've opened 120 so far, and the remaining 60 should go a little faster, I think.
Can you say what kind of results you've seen from the boxes that have been opened?
Of course, any findings will have to be reported to the court. I will make the comment that quite a number of irregularities have surfaced from this investigation.
Can you tell me what kind of irregularities?
I don't think that it would be proper for me to go into any more detail.
Doctor, since he is admittedly running behind his own schedule, do you feel that he may succumb to pressures from Congress for wage and price controls?
He didn't indicate today that he's about to do it. That's one thing he made quite clear, that he is opposed to wage and price controls. And I rather suspect if Congress imposed them on him, he would veto it. He would veto such a bill.
He figures this is a politically and in every way an unpopular issue then?
He indicated as much today, I thought. If I might say this in addition, personally, I think it'd be very difficult now to enforce direct controls on prices and wages.
Isn't it too late?
I rather think it is a little bit late.
Ambassadors do the women of America make in Acapulco and, say, other fun capitals of the world?
Well, the large majority of them, I would say, were very good ambassadors. They certainly have, I don't know about the other parts of the world, but in Acapulco, they have much more freedom than the Mexican woman has. And I can tell you the Mexican woman is liberating herself following the example of her American sisters. And, of course, you see a lot of the newer styles on the American women.